Hey you guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Before I get into the topic here, if you like the issues that I talk about, if you like these topics, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you are interested in working with me, I'm going to be talking about some of the healing work I do in this video here. Click on my website link in the description and you can see all of the different services that I offer. So today we're talking about what I'm calling the secret drive that keeps us stuck in toxic relationships, which is eroticizing rejection and abandonment. You may have heard this term before, you may not have heard this term before, it might be new to you. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. What it is, I'm going to share my personal experience with it, I'm going to share what I've learned about it, and most importantly, I'm going to talk about what we can do about it. Because that's the most important thing, right? How we can actually shift this pattern to create healthy relationships and not get stuck in these toxic relationships. So not too many people are talking about this. It's a subject and a way of framing this phenomenon that I haven't heard much about before. So I'm going to talk about why that is here in a minute. But this is something that a lot of us experience if we've had early experiences of rejection and abandonment. What does this mean? Eroticizing rejection and abandonment. It basically means to make something erotic, like to be sexually attracted to it, to be very, very highly attracted to something. And in our case here, that something is the experience of rejection and abandonment. So why is this? What is going on here? First, I'm going to share a little bit of background on this. Like, what are we actually talking about here? What's going on? And then I'm going to share my experience with it. So there are some theories. I talk a lot about the pull, the familiarity that keeps us in these toxic relationship patterns, but I don't talk a lot about what specifically creates that sexual attraction, because there's a lot that's not known about it. So there are some theories here, and that's what I'm going to talk about here first. So we know that romantic rejection actually stimulates parts of the brain that are associated with craving, addiction, reward, motivation. These are very, very powerful stimulus here. So they have actually done studies on this. They've put people in MRI machines. They did a study that I read recently. They did MRI scans on men and women who had recently been rejected by someone that they said they were still deeply in love with. So during that scan, they put men and women in an MRI scanner, and they showed them pictures of the people who had just rejected them, the people they said that they were still in love with, but the relationship was over. They also showed them pictures of people that they knew, people that they were familiar with, but didn't have any romantic feelings toward or attraction towards. And so while they're in the scanners, they gave them like different exercises to do to try to distract them from the romantic thoughts about this person that they'd recently been rejected by. And they found that when the participants were shown the pictures of the person who they were rejected by, that they still had feelings for, the parts of their brain that are again associated with craving, reward, motivation, even physical pain and distress were highly lit up when they looked at those pictures, much more so than when they looked at the familiar person that they didn't have any feelings for. So what does this tell us? This tells us that romantic rejection is a lot like an addiction. It's lighting up those same areas of the brain that are lit up when someone is addicted to a substance or a behavior. So, I talk about this a lot when I talk about how addictive toxic relationships can be. I'm not just like making this stuff up. The research has shown that this is true. And you guys probably know from experience, these relationships can be so addictive. But what this study and what a lot of the research out there hasn't really told us is the why. We know that those areas of our brain light up. We don't yet know why. So that's just one theory. Here's another theory. And I talk about this one a lot. Another theory as to why this this phenomenon happens, why we become so highly sexually attracted to experiences of rejection and abandonment, is that it's what I could call the familiarity theory. And again, I talk about this a lot in my other videos. If we've had those early experiences of rejection and abandonment, they then become familiar. We know them. And so when we meet someone who makes us feel that way, there is something about that that pulls us towards that person. And it can remind you of someone familiar from childhood, like one of your caregivers or someone that you knew, and it can cause you to want to seek out more of the same because it is familiar, because it does feel like home. So people with a history of being rejected, of being abandoned, they may be subconsciously seeking out those experiences because they are familiar scenarios. And very often, sometimes we seek those out subconsciously because we want to change the story. Like if in our past the story didn't really end well, like our parent didn't treat us well or we were abandoned, we want to subconsciously change that story. Find someone who maybe displays those characteristics in the beginning, but we hope that the outcome could be different, that love will rule the day, or whatever it is that we have in our heads. This is another theory. And again, a lot of these things are theories right now. There isn't any really clear specific research out there as to why this is happening. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through here. I actually don't know why specifically we become so sexually attracted to these experiences of rejection and abandonment. Like I said, there's not a lot of research here about why specifically the sexual arousal becomes so huge when we're dealing with these types of scenarios. But, I'm curious. I wonder if you guys have an opinion. Have you experienced this yourself? What was it like? Did you have a sense of like a knowingness about why you felt that this person was so attractive when they were actually rejecting you or abandoning you? What I'm going to talk about now is my personal experience with this. And I've shared bits and pieces of this, but I'm going to share really specifically my experience of what it was like to have that drive, that sexual attraction for people who made me feel rejected and abandoned. So I want to share my personal experience about what this was like for me back in the day when I was dating and really knew like nothing about any of this stuff. So when I was dating, when I was much younger and even like not that long ago, like a couple years ago, I always, unfortunately, found myself really, really attracted to people who were not totally available, who would kind of like they would be somewhat there, but they'd also be somewhat distant. I would frequently feel rejected. I would frequently feel abandoned. And I just kept going back for more because these people who were creating these experiences for me, they left me feeling such an intense longing, such an intense physical pull towards them. And at the time, again, like I knew nothing about this stuff. I just thought that I had feelings for certain people and that's just how it was. Like we're talking, like when I talk about dating back in the day, it's not like it was now. I call it the dark ages because we had the internet, but people weren't on the internet talking about this stuff. So it was really like all the information I got about dating and relationships was like from people I knew. And frankly, the people that I knew didn't know much about this stuff either. So we were all kind of just blindly looking for love here based on our feelings. Let me know if this was your experience too. So let me back this train up here. So when I was younger, I did have some experiences of rejection and abandonment. So I had what I would call big T traumas, big T abandonment traumas, and also little t abandonment traumas. And if you're not familiar with those terms, let me just talk about that quickly here. So what I call a big T trauma, this is something traumatic that happens, usually it's just like once or for a short period of time, like a car accident, like going through a violent experience, like going through war. Another example would be like physical abuse. That's what we would call big T traumas. There are also little t traumas, things that aren't maybe the outside world wouldn't recognize maybe immediately as traumatic, but being rejected a lot by your parents, being criticized. Those are what we would call little t traumas. Neglect would be considered a little t trauma. So if you have any sort of configuration of those, that can lead to this drive, this eroticizing of rejection and abandonment. So I had those experiences when I was younger. And all of these things just added up. So as an adult, I found myself, again, drawn to and very highly sexually attracted to people who made me feel rejected and or abandoned. And like I said, I wasn't aware of it at the time, didn't question it, was like, oh, I just, like how people talk about love, it just happens, you just fall in love. Like, who knows? It's this big mystery. Now we know a little bit more. It's not totally a mystery here, especially when we've had toxic relationships. But it was only later in life that I started to question this, because I kept ending up in these toxic relationships very much driven by the desire I felt for someone, that attraction on that sexual physical level. And so I eventually started to become aware of this, but not right away. And I've told this story before. A couple years ago, back when I was dating, this was after I got separated, after I was going through my divorce, and I was just out there living my life, working, and I was at work, and this new person came into the building, and we started talking, and this man was giving off so many red flags. It was ridiculous. Like, it was, and he like wasn't even talking about dating me. He was just sharing stories about his life, and it was clear to me, and this was even way before I started to learn about toxic relationships and understand those dynamics, didn't even really know what an abusive relationship was beyond physical abuse. But even then, even me knowing nothing, it was like super clear that this guy would have made a terrible partner. That like if we had indeed dated, he would have abandoned me, he would have rejected me. He was like telling stories about like the women in his life and how badly they speak of him and how many enemies he's made. I'm laughing because it's kind of ridiculous now. But yeah, so this was how this guy showed up. And I watched my body just light up and be like, whoa, I find this person super attractive. And I had gone far enough in my healing and awakening journey to actually be able to have some perspective and watch myself. And I watched myself become so sexually attracted to this person, and I went like, what the heck is this? What is going on here? Why am I finding this person who is clearly going to be a terrible partner? He's basically talking about what a terrible partner he is. And my body's like, yes, this is the guy for me. So I'm curious, like, if you guys have ever experienced something like this. I was totally floored. And that was really the first time that it gave me some pause. And I was like, there's something here. Like, I don't know if this is totally normal or just like it really made me start to think like, what is this? What's going on here? So eventually I did do a lot of healing work, and I started to dig deep and figure this stuff out. And one of the first things I realized is that it's not my fault. Because sometimes what happens is we start to identify these patterns and we can get really down on ourselves, like we did something wrong here, or there's something wrong with us to be attracted to these types of people sexually. But what I realized is it's not my fault. It's not my fault that I experienced these traumas early in childhood and that my brain developed this way and this is how my psyche was wired. I have no blame in this. And my responsibility now is to do the healing work to shift this. So it isn't my fault, and it's my responsibility to change this dynamic. That was one of the things that I had to come to terms with, because it's very easy. Like, it's very easy to go into a blaming mentality and stay stuck there. Yes, it's not our fault that we experienced this, but we do have to take some agency in understanding that, okay, I'm recognizing this. It wasn't my fault that this happened, but now it is my job to fix this, so to speak, to change these attraction patterns. Yeah, Karen is saying, I also feel like there's part of me that wants to keep me stuck in a state of negative self-talk. Yeah, actually, Karen, that's a pretty accurate way of describing these patterns. There is like that part of you that wants to stay stuck for various reasons. I could do a whole separate talk on that, but yeah, that's very common. That if I keep going for emotionally unavailable people, it will be a confirmation bias that I will always be rejected and abandoned, and that I am the common denominator. Yeah, Karen, so I'll just touch on this quickly. Yes, I want to validate what you're saying here. Yes, I have been through all this too. And just one of the things I'll share here about this is that this is kind of what our minds do. Like, as painful as a pattern may be, like as awful as it is to stay in a relationship where you feel rejected or abandoned, or you keep having these experiences, there's still this part of us that likes it because it's what we know. It's familiar. And therefore, to our primitive brain that views anything new or different as unsafe, this feels safe. And so yeah, there is this part of us that will just keep us stuck in that. There's ways to get out of that. This is what I help my clients with in my program. But yes, I totally get what you're saying here, and you're right. So Suzanne is saying, yeah, I have a tendency to attract emotionally unavailable men. This makes me feel abandoned and rejected as well. So yeah, Suzanne, I totally know what you're saying here. I would phrase it a little bit differently, because lots of people attract emotionally unavailable men. If you're an attractive woman and you're putting yourself out there, you're going to attract emotionally unavailable men. They don't discriminate as far as who they go towards. But it's now your job to say no to them much earlier. It's our job to have boundaries and to weed them out. So yeah, and you're right, that does create this self-perpetuating cycle. If we don't weed out those people, we can then feel like, well, the only people that are attracted to me are emotionally available people. That's not the reality. It's just that we have kept them there. And when we're dating someone who's emotionally unavailable, we are not available to date other people, to date people who are available. There is this aspect of doing our own work to become as emotionally as available as we can be, that then makes it easier for a healthy, available partner to be attracted to us. So there's a lot of different dynamics here, and I've talked about that in other videos. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. Noah's saying, yeah, I have blinders and earplugs to red flags. You guys, yes, if you have this experience, please reach out to me. This is what I help you with in my program, because I have been there. And if we work together, I make sure that you are not shutting your eyes and ears to the red flags. That's what I'm here to help you with. I am the objective observer of your dating life. So Cassie is saying, oh good, she's sharing a story. I met a guy in my divorce support group while we were both in the midst of our divorces. He was overtly emotionally unavailable, yeah. Yet I romanticized our connection in my head. I felt drawn to him immediately. We didn't date long and he wasn't abusive, but I was hung up on him for several months thinking about what we could have had. Yes, Cassie, I'm laughing because I know this so well. And thank you so much for sharing that experience. Yeah. Back to what I was talking about with this eroticizing rejection and abandonment. So like, what do we do about it here? How do we change this dynamic? What I realized in my own journey was that I really had two choices here. Do I keep going for the people that I feel this intense sexual attraction for, who make terrible partners and who make me miserable? Or do I choose something else? Do I choose the people who I may not feel as intensely attracted to, but who are healthy partners and who actually make me happy? Those were my choices. And you probably know already, I chose the latter. I chose the person who I didn't feel as intense of a sexual attraction with in the beginning, but who makes me happy, who is a healthy partner. Now, when I say this, when people hear about this phenomenon and when they hear people start to talk about it, they can go into very black and white thinking and think like, well, that means, do I have to choose between being sexually attracted to my partner and not at all? No. So hear me very clearly here. The choice is not between being attracted to your partner and not. That's not what we want here. If you're going out with someone and they look really great on paper and you're not at all attracted to them, don't go out with them. That's not going to be a healthy relationship. That's not going to be a good match. So it's not the case that you're not going to feel sexual attraction to a healthy partner. I feel very attracted to my partner. The difference is it's not that toxic attraction. What is the toxic attraction? The type I'm talking about when we're eroticizing rejection and abandonment. It's different. It's like in here, and I'll be totally honest with you guys, it can feel in the very beginning when you're making that transition from a toxic relationship to a healthy relationship and those attraction dynamics, it can feel like a letdown in the beginning, only in the beginning. Because in the beginning, we're probably still going through our healing process. We're still unwinding from that roller coaster toxic relationship where our needs aren't getting met. And so any sort of attention or sexual attention from this partner, it's like fireworks. It doesn't feel like that when you're with a healthy partner. So if we're used to those toxic relationship dynamics, that's our baseline, right? So we're basically used to the drama. We're used to the roller coaster. We're used to that intensity. And don't get me wrong, that intensity can feel really good at times, even though that intensity, I can't even say that word, that intensity can often lead to our misery. It can even kill us if we stay in an abusive relationship where physical abuse is happening. So it's like, we can imagine like if you've ever been addicted to any sort of substance, if you're an alcoholic, that drug of choice, that substance that you're addicted to, that feels incredibly good. Ask anyone who's ever been addicted to a substance. It feels amazing. And it's also going to kill you. So we need to have this awareness. It feels good, yes, in that brief moment of your encounter with them, in the very beginning of the relationship, but it's also extremely harmful for you. Just like alcohol would be extremely harmful for an alcoholic, just like drugs would be harmful for a drug addict. Again, remember what we talked about, the areas of the brain that are lighting up are extremely similar, and we could even say they're the same as an addiction. So at first for me, I was a little bit sad to let that toxic type of attraction go. I was. And I did grieve that a little bit in the beginning. But now, not at all. Not at all. It's the healthy attraction that I feel for my partner, it's actually so much better than what I had in the past with those toxic men. I can tell you that. Because what we don't realize in that moment, when we're feeling like, oh, I have to choose between being attracted to someone and not in order to have a healthy relationship, what we don't realize is there's this whole other type of attraction that we can feel. And you only start to uncover that when you've done your healing work and when you're engaging with someone who is healthy for you. It doesn't come right away. It's not like you're going to leave a toxic relationship and bam, go out there and meet someone healthy and you're just going to feel this right away. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately, for most people. I am super attracted to my partner, but like I said, it's different. It's not as intense as that toxic attraction, because what I realize is that toxic attraction, what that really was, it was definitely sexual attraction, but it was also mixed with longing, it was mixed with anxiety, it was mixed with like desperation at times. So that was all the stuff that was going on in there. Now that I'm in a healthy relationship, the attraction is there, but it's mixed with safety and love. And again, it's not as intense, but it feels so much better. I don't miss that intense attraction, that toxic attraction anymore. Because the rest of the aspects of my relationship are just so amazing that, yeah, I definitely don't miss it anymore. So again, what do we do about this? We make a choice. And ladies, I know it's a hard choice to make. I totally get it. I've been there. But how we break this cycle, how we stop recreating this toxic attraction pattern, is we choose differently. It's what we would do if we realized that we were an alcoholic or if we were addicted to drugs. We know how good that whiskey is going to taste. We know how good that glass of wine is going to make us feel. And we know that it's going to hurt us. So we choose the orange juice. Orange juice is still a delicious choice. It's healthy. It tastes good. It's not going to kill us. It's going to make us feel good. So that's really what it comes down to. And I wish it were easier. Like, I wish you could just, like, I wish that there was a magic wand that we could wave that would just make these toxic attractions disappear. But unfortunately, it isn't like that. What does make it easier is to do your healing work. And this is what made it easier for me, because there's a lot of dynamics that are going on here that do draw us to these toxic partners, and most of them are unconscious. So once I did the subconscious healing work, like, I released a lot of the suppressed emotions related to my earlier traumas. That made the attraction to people who rejected and abandoned me, it made it less intense. It definitely did that. And then what really cinched the deal here, what really made me not choose those partners anymore, was I did the subconscious work to rewire some of the things that I believed about myself. Like that I wasn't good enough. Because, like, from the very beginning, I actually did want a healthy relationship. But deep down, I didn't believe that those healthy partners were going to want me. And so I sabotaged those connections when they did show up. So I did the work to deeply understand I'm pretty awesome. And I have lots of things to offer in a relationship. And I do deserve real love. And so when it came my way, it was like, oh yeah, okay, bring it, I'm ready. There was still definitely that transition. And like I said, there was still a little bit of grief for me to go through, to let go of those toxic attraction patterns. But when I did the healing work, oh my gosh, it made it so much easier to not choose those partners and to choose a healthy partner for me. So this is what I do in my 12-week program. If you guys are interested in working with me, send me a message, send me an email. Just get in contact with me and I can talk to you about all the details and see if I can help you. Noah says, great whiskey analogy. Yeah, like, because I do like whiskey. Here's the thing, yeah, like, I do like whiskey, but I don't drink it very much except for special occasions because I know it's not good for me. Like, it doesn't actually make my body feel good. I like the taste, but yeah, it really, I know that it's not good for me, so I don't choose it. Yeah, like junk food versus health food. Exactly. Cassie's saying a magic wand would be nice. Yeah, I know. I think your energy healing is probably the next best thing. Thank you, Cassie. Yeah, I think so too. It's the closest thing I've found to something like that. She's saying your help in your program made it possible for me to choose my healthy, sweet guy and walk through my uncertainty about how I felt at the beginning. I'm so glad I did. He's wonderful. Thank you. Oh, Cassie, I love your story. You're so welcome. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because that is exactly why I do what I do. Because I did feel like in the beginning it was a little bit like walking in the dark until I got help. Then it made it a lot easier. But yeah, because I talk about this a lot too. Like when we're trying to navigate based on our feelings, when we've had these toxic relationships and a history of trauma or neglect in our past, you guys, it's pretty much near impossible. I was someone who was very feeling based, like really intuitive, like very emotionally connected. And so it was very confusing for me in the beginning because I was like, well, yeah, where is this big sexual pull I'm supposed to be feeling with these healthy partners? If it's not there, maybe it means it's not the right person. Or maybe it means that this is not the right relationship if I don't know right away that this is the one. And so it gets very, very confusing, and that's why I do what I do here. Why these unavailable and toxic men are so much into sex? That's a really good question. From my experience, men who are, and women too, people we could say, who are emotionally unavailable, they tend to not be unavailable when it comes to physical intimacy. So I know quite a few men, I've met quite a few men in my life who were not emotionally available at all. They didn't feel safe to share their feelings. They didn't even want to. They really weren't tapped into that aspect of themselves. But since we're all human and we still need some form of intimacy and connection with people in our lives, the way that felt for them was like socially acceptable, or like, you know, men are conditioned to suppress a lot of emotions and to not be so emotional. They get teased when they're younger for crying. They're like, stop being a girl, stop being like a wuss, that kind of thing. So they are conditioned to not be so emotionally available. But what is acceptable for them is to have intimacy through sex, physically. So I think that's a lot of what's going on. I think, like I said, there's, in our society, we deem it somewhat acceptable for men to sleep around, to have a lot of partners, and that's really why in some cases they're more into that physical aspect of the relationship than the other parts. There could be a lot of other things going on, Rashi. You know, it's hard to speak in general here, but they could have a sexual addiction. I'm still, you know, like, I don't know a lot about sexual addiction. I'm still learning about that. I'm still on the fence as to whether that's like a thing or not. I think it could be. But I also think it's used as an excuse sometimes for cheating. So I'm not sure how I feel about that at this point. But yeah, there could be a lot of different things going on here. For some people, I think sex can be used as a way to distract themselves from some of the emotions they're actually feeling. So instead of doing their own work, instead of sitting with their emotions, instead of feeling them, instead of meditating, they're going to go and have lots of sex with different people in order to distract themselves from their emotions, from their reality. So that could be going on too. The important thing to realize here is not to worry so much about the why. I know it's very tempting. It's tempting to try to figure it out so that we can feel better about it. But don't worry so much about the why. Just know, like, what you do want to learn is the signs of emotional unavailability, and then when you see them, to understand, okay, this is not the right person for me. I'm going to move on. Instead of trying to fix them or to change them or to understand why and try to accept, that's not going to be as helpful for you as learning what the signs are and then leaving when you see them. There's a lot to learn here about this topic, and as I learn more and as people do more studies on this, I'm going to continue to share what I've learned with you. But yeah, it was like even just putting eroticizing rejection or eroticizing abandonment into Google, there's like a couple things that come up, really not that much at this point. So there's a lot more to learn. I hope this was helpful today. I hope that me sharing my experience is helpful. What I talked about as far as making the choice, I hope that you find that helpful too, because really for me that's just what it came down to, choosing differently and doing the healing work that helped to make that choice a lot easier and a lot more desirable. Okay guys, talk to you next week. Have a great week.